Last time we were at this table, we were talking about Marvel Age comic books. Are they comics?
They're definitely comic book form, even though it's a magazine. And it does introduce a lot of characters first. So there's different thoughts about it, whether the stuff that comes there, it's first appearance or a sneak preview or whatnot.
What ends up deciding whether or not these comic book appearances become key-worthy are the collectors. It's those who are actually hunting for them, those who are willing to pay top dollar for a book that may not deserve it on paper, but as the Overstreet has incorporated in the Marvel Age comic books into their price guide, very much so has the market spoken. Ryan, you actually made your CBSI debut in an ongoing series we do called True First, where we dive into these appearances that are almost controversial to the community.
That was my first one. We talked about Morbius and how some of his first appearances are like in magazines versus the actual comic book where he first appeared. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there on which one of those counts as actually his true first appearance.
And the prices are reflected online, so there are collectors of Morbius who care about those appearances, regardless of if they're a magazine or if it's in a preview. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We're actually going to be diving into some viewer comments today about these two videos.
Yeah, thank you for all the comments you guys have left. We really appreciate it. And it's great to see the differences between, people that are like, no, those aren't first appearances. And people are like, well, maybe it is what it is. But when it comes down to is what you love, if that is something that you're looking for and you are somebody that likes to finish those things, just time up. It's like, hey, I need this thing that came out on Marvel Age, whether it's a first appearance or not. You want it, you want to pay for it. That's how it is.
We have Jam Sessions who says, I don't see them as first appearances since they are ads. If Marvel Age were to be considered first appearance, then every previews issue would also be first appearance if that contains first pages from comics.
That's a fair point.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of previews. Didn't you just find a previews at Mill Geek when you were doing some sorting?
I did. I was flipping through the quarter bins and found the preview for Dark Avengers. So,
Number one.
Right? I feel like that kind of counts for something. I don't know. It was cool to see anyway.
True. And our Baltazar, the cover for the last Ukla the Mak CD has a character that the first appearance is on that cover of that album.
Interesting. So the art of a band that you were in contains a first appearance of a character by an artist who does work for Dark Horse and DC Comics and has his own publishing company.
Yep.
Is that considered a true first?
He considers that a first appearance.
And the artist does consider that a first appearance. So it's like opinions differ.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I like hearing it. But let's see what someone else said here. This is a homie, Joshua Sanders.
Hey.
We also had a comment from Joshua Sanders.
Joshua Sanders is the homie. He says, yes, I believe they should at the very least be acknowledged as what they are, a preview of these characters. Also, absolutely yes to more comic pops.
Heck yeah.
Here I am.
Joshua Sanders, that is an interesting take on the situation. If we're going to give them any credit at all, as Overstreet did for the first time this year, well, if there's going to be credit given, it's key status. We have to. If it's a first appearance, there isn't, you can't give it half credit. It's partial first appearance.
Right.
If you even slightly go down that rabbit hole, it becomes a first appearance. Interesting stuff. We also had Seesaw Collectibles. He raises a very good point. He says here, I was one of those crazy collectors that collected Wolverine appearances. Yes, all of them. He was a completionist in the 90s. This is someone who goes on record to say he didn't care about issues number 1 through whatever it was that he was collecting. He cared about everything. It wasn't just that run. He wants those previews. He wants that random ad. He wants that minor appearance. He wants that crossover event. If it had Wolverine, he wanted it, and he would pay more money than it was worth. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the difference in collectors and their opinions. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. And that's how I am with all that Vertigo stuff, how I like that Preacher and the Absolute Vertigo. And that's another one. It's basically taken a couple of pages from the very first issue of Preacher, and it's not necessarily a first appearance because it's kind of a showcase of what's coming in Vertigo. yet I consider a first appearance, and I would get it and did because I want to have it. That's how I am.
Interesting take, because that appearance actually shows on the label from CGC
Right.
as something that predates Preacher #1. But notice they don't say it's the first appearance of Jesse or something.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. All right. Here's one from Legion Trooper who says, the bottom line is that they are not comic books. So they are not the first comic book appearances. This is an interesting thought here. All right. Because Marvel Age, I think that's the reason why it was a slow rise and that why it ended up in the book at the end, because it happens to be in comic book form. I think that's how you even described it at the beginning of the podcast. Had this not been in comic book form, it would have been considered more of an ad, maybe a giveaway, an ash can, what have you. But Ryan, the magazine point that you made. So as soon as we say it's not comic, if it has to do with the size and the format, it means that it has to be comic book size.
I disagree in the whole making a difference between a comic book and a magazine because it's still an appearance, whether it's like I said, in an album, you never seen this image before until this happened. And thus, that is the actual appearance. It doesn't matter if it's a comic book or not. And it doesn't say, oh, this is the first appearance in a comic book of Wolverine. It's the first appearance. And whether it's a comic book or a magazine or a freaking poster, not a poster, but...
What? But that's what we're talking about. You said it. It could be a poster.
Yeah. If it predates.
If it predates it as an appearance is what we're talking about. And we're talking about the completionist. We're talking about Seesaw Collectibles.
Right.
If that Wolverine appearance made it, then he would want it. Thus, to him, it's a key. Purely opinion. But
Exactly.
You know what? As a Hellboy collector...
Yeah. You got to look for that.
You know what? I own the poster that was sent out to comic book stores that features the upcoming issue of Next Men 21, which is the first appearance of Red Hellboy. I paid more money for that poster because it has a picture of the book that is said to be the first appearance of Red Hellboy.
And it came out way before.
And it's a preview. So I paid more for it. And this isn't hyperbole. This is actually what it is. But I see where it's a slippery slope. Here's the problem. San Diego Comic-Con. That's a pamphlet. That's a program guide. That's the first appearance of Hellboy in a story because there are comic books in it. Like there are stories in it. But that's a program guide. Are we going to now say if we're going to throw certain things out, what do we throw out? Do we throw out the program guides too? Because there's directions on how to get to the con in there. Yeah.
Also brings to mind, which is not exactly first appearance type of thing, but it's something that I think about. Fantastic 420 and it having a letter by George R. Martin, and I believe is the very first published anything by George R. Martin, and it's on a comic book.
That's right. George R. Martin actually gave you that Fantastic Four issue for that same reason, right?
You did. You hooked it up, and I've got it in my long box, and now I just need to get a signature because I had not had that idea cross my mind before, and now that sounds like a really good idea. But in general, I'm thinking as far as first appearance goes, you got some people who are going to be concerned about their first appearance in an ongoing story versus first appearance in a preview advertisement for that same story. Depending on your love for the character, I feel like.
It's almost like it's two different things.
Yes.
Whoa.
It's like that comment that you talked about before, that to specify it's a preview appearance as opposed to first appearance. I think that's logical.
That makes sense. And it also makes it very clear to the collectors, if you're a completionist, you probably want that in the Overstreet, thus justifies the Overstreet for containing it, which was the main critique from that video. Interesting stuff. I feel like this conversation could keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to think about here. A lot that I hadn't been thinking about.
We can geek out for hours. Just do it responsibly. That's all I'm saying.
That's good advice. Mm-hmm. I think I'll listen to that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Always like, and always make sure you're subscribed.
Yeah, hit that notification bell. That's the best way that you can keep up to date with all the content that we're producing. I appreciate you both for being here today.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate the comic fam. And, as always,
geek responsibly.
Enough said. I have an eBay store that I never tell you guys about. But if you go into the description, you can hit the link and you can get some cool comics.